Imagine standing in a museum in Morocco. You're looking at a skull, 300,000 years old. High forehead, small face, a chin. It looks exactly like yours. The brain inside was the
Two
same
worlds, one
size as
Earth.
your
The story
brain.
of our shared
Same
legacy
structure,
begins. Neanderthal and
same
Homo
capacity.
sapiens, united by
But
survival.
here's the thing that should make you pause. The person who owned this skull, this person who looked just like you, lived for 190,000 years and left almost nothing behind. No cave paintings, no jewelry, no burial sites that suggest they cared about death the way you care about death. No evidence of trade networks or complex tools. Nothing that screams humanity the way we understand it today. The hardware was there, the brain was installed, fully functional, ready to go, but something was missing. Then around 70,000 years ago, everything changed. Suddenly there's art. Suddenly there's culture. Suddenly humans are making beads and carving figurines and painting on cave walls. They're burying their dead with care. They're trading shells across hundreds of miles. They're acting human. What happened? Some scientists think it was a mutation. One small genetic change that flipped a switch in the human brain. A random accident that made us who we are. Others say no. The capacity was always there. Culture just takes time to develop. It spreads slowly. It needs the right conditions. Nobody knows for sure. But think about this. For 190,000 years, humans walked around with brains capable of writing Shakespeare and understanding quantum physics. They had the mental tools to build rockets and compose symphonies. But they didn't. They just survived. Made simple tools, hunted, gathered, lived and died. Were they less human than us? Or were they human in a way we can't quite understand anymore? This is the mystery we're going to explore tonight. The gap between having a human brain and being truly human. The moment when something shifted inside us. When we stopped just surviving and started creating meaning. It's a story about evolution, but not the kind you learned in school. Not about bodies changing over millions of years. This is about minds, about consciousness, about the strange accident that might have made us who we are. And here's what makes it perfect for tonight. There are no clear answers, just possibilities, just theories floating in the dark, the kind of mystery you can sink into, let your mind wander through, drift with. If this is playing while you're trying to sleep, that's completely fine. That's the whole idea. You can subscribe if you want and let me know where in the world you are and what time it is. I genuinely love seeing that, so settle in, get comfortable. We're going back to a time before art existed, before anyone had buried their dead or wondered about tomorrow. Back to humans who had all the pieces but hadn't quite put them together yet. Back to the moment before we became us. Let's take it slow. We have all night, not humans. We already know humans appeared 300,000 years ago. But where did those humans come from? What did our ancestors look like before they became us? The answer takes us back 6 million years. To a creature that wasn't quite human and wasn't quite ape. Something in between. Scientists call this the last common ancestor. The species that split into two branches. One branch became chimpanzees. The other became us. We've never found its bones, probably never will. Fossils are rare. Most creatures die and rot and disappear. The odds of becoming a fossil are astronomically small. You need the right conditions, the right soil, the right timing. Most of our ancestors left no trace at all. But we know this creature existed because here we are, and there are chimps. And we share 98.8% of our DNA. That tiny difference, that 1.2%, that's what made us human. Consider how small that is. Take your genome, all 3 billion base pairs. Change just 36 million of them. That's the difference between you and a chimpanzee. 36 million sounds like a lot, but spread across 3 billion, it's nothing. A rounding error, a handful of typos in a library of books. And yet those typos changed everything. The last common ancestor probably looked more like a chimp than a human. Covered in hair, long arms, built for climbing. It lived in the forests of Africa. Ate fruit mostly, maybe some leaves, some insects. Its brain was about the size of a modern chimp's brain, around 400 cubic centimeters. A human brain today is 1,400 cubic centimeters, more than 3 times bigger. But size isn't everything. Elephants have brains 4 times bigger than ours. Whales have brains 5 times bigger. They're not writing poetry or building rockets. What matters is structure, organization, how the brain is wired. The last common ancestor had a brain that could solve problems. It could use tools. Chimps today use sticks to fish for termites. They use rocks to crack nuts. They plan ahead. They remember. They recognize themselves in mirrors. That's sophisticated. That's smart. but it's not human smart. The difference is subtle but profound. A chimp can use a stick to get termites. A human can look at a stick and imagine a spear, a ladder, a bridge, a symbol, a god. Somewhere between that common ancestor and us, something changed in the brain. Not just size, not just raw processing power. Something about how we think. Scientists call it symbolic thought. The ability to let one thing represent another thing, to see meaning beyond the physical, to create abstractions. This is what makes language possible. A sound represents an object. A word represents an idea. A story represents truth. This is what makes art possible. A line on a cave wall represents a bison. Red ochre represents blood. A carving represents a person who died. This is what makes religion possible. A tree represents life. A mountain represents heaven. A ritual represents connection to something beyond yourself. The last common ancestor couldn't do this. Its brain was concrete, literal. It saw a stick and thought stick. Food and thought food. Threat and thought run. It lived entirely in the present moment. No past, no future, just now. And honestly, there's something beautiful about that. Something we've lost. That total presence, that complete absorption in the immediate. But it also meant no planning beyond tomorrow. No stories about where you came from. No wondering about what happens after death. No art, no culture, no meaning beyond survival. The split happened around 6 million years ago. Maybe in East Africa. Maybe when the climate changed and forests became grasslands. Maybe when some group of these creatures got cut off from the others, separated by a river or a mountain range or just distance. Evolution needs separation. If populations keep mixing genes, keep blending, nothing new emerges. But separate them. Let them adapt to different environments. Now you get change. One population stayed in the forest, kept climbing trees, kept eating fruit. These became chimpanzees and bonobos. The other population moved to the grasslands, started walking upright, started eating different food. These became us. But it took time, millions of years. The change was so gradual that no single generation would have noticed. Your parents looked like you, your children looked like you, but your ancestors from 100,000 generations back, they'd look alien. The first major change was walking upright. This freed up the hands. Suddenly you could carry things, make things, use tools while walking. But walking upright came with costs. It's harder on the spine, harder on the knees. Childbirth became dangerous because the pelvis had to narrow to support upright walking. Human babies are born helpless because they have to be born early, before their heads get too big to fit through that narrowed pelvis. Evolution is about trade-offs, always trade-offs. You gain something, you lose something. The question is whether the gain is worth the loss. And apparently walking upright helped enough that it was worth the back pain and the difficult births. The second major change was diet. Moving to the grasslands meant less fruit, more meat, more tubers and roots that require digging. Meat is dense nutrition. It provides protein and fat and calories in a compact package. But it requires hunting or scavenging or both. Our ancestors probably started as scavengers, following predators, waiting for them to finish eating, then moving in to crack open the bones for marrow. Marrow is rich in fat. Other animals couldn't get to it. But if you had a rock, you could smash the bone open. Access nutrition nobody else could reach. This is tool use, basic, simple, but it's a start. The third major change was the brain. It started growing, slowly at first, then faster. Nobody knows exactly why. Maybe meat provided the nutrition needed for a bigger brain. Brains are expensive. They use 20% of your calories despite being only 2% of your body weight. You need dense nutrition to support that. Maybe social complexity drove it. Living in groups requires keeping track of relationships. Who's allied with whom? Who owes favors? Who can be trusted? This requires memory and planning and theory of mind. Maybe it was tool making. Creating tools requires imagining something that doesn't exist yet. Planning steps, remembering techniques, teaching others. This requires abstract thought. Probably it was all of these things. Evolution rarely has one cause. It's always multiple pressures pushing in the same direction. By 2 million years ago, our ancestors had brains twice the size of chimps. They were making sophisticated stone tools, hand axes that required planning and skill. These hand axes are remarkable, teardrop-shaped, flaked on both sides, symmetrical, beautiful even, and they didn't change. For 1.6 million years, humans made the same hand axes, generation after generation. The exact same design. Think about that. 1.6 million years of tradition, of teaching children the way your parents taught you, of perfection through repetition. We can't imagine that kind of stability now. We change everything constantly. New phones every year, new fashions every season, new ideas every day. But for most of human history, change was glacial. What worked kept working. Why mess with success? The hand axes worked. They cut meat, scraped hides, dug roots, chopped wood. They were the Swiss Army knife of the Stone Age. And because they worked, they didn't change. This tells us something about the minds that made them. They could plan, they could learn, they could teach, but they weren't innovating, weren't experimenting, weren't asking what if. They had bigger brains than the common ancestor, but they weren't thinking like modern humans yet. That spark, that creative restlessness, that drive to make something new, it wasn't there yet. You might be wondering, what does any of this have to do with you? Why does it matter what happened millions of years ago? Here's why. Every step you take traces back to that first ape who stood upright. Every word you speak connects to changes in genes like FOXP2. Every thought you think runs on a brain built by millions of years of accidents. You're not separate from this story. You are this story. Still happening, still unfolding. The last common ancestor gave us the foundation, the raw material, the biological inheritance. But something else had to happen, some change, some mutation, some cultural shift, something that turned survival into meaning, that turned existence into story, that turned life into something worth wondering about. And when that happened, we stopped being just another ape. We became something new, something strange, something that could look back at its own ancestors and ask where it came from. We became human, not in body but in mind. There's something strange about us being here together right now. You and me. We're separated by distance and time, different lives, but we're both wondering about the same thing. Where we came from, what made us human. And maybe that wondering, that curiosity is part of what makes us human in the first place. Around 7 million years ago, something happened in Africa. A branch of apes started spending more time upright. Not all the time, not even most of the time at first, but more than their cousins. They stood up to see over tall grass, to spot predators, to reach fruit in low branches, to carry things. And their bodies began to change. The spine curved into an S shape. The pelvis widened and tilted. The legs straightened and lengthened. The feet developed arches. The big toe moved in line with the others instead of sticking out to the side like a thumb. These changes took millions of years. They happened slowly, generation after generation, each small shift making the next one possible. By 4 million years ago, some of these apes walked upright most of the time. We call them Australopithecines, southern apes. Their fossils show bodies caught between two worlds. Hips built for walking, arms still long enough for climbing. Feet that could grip branches but also support their weight on flat ground. They lived in the trees and on the ground. The best of both worlds. Or maybe the worst. Not fully adapted to either. But they kept walking. Consider what walking upright costs. It's not efficient. 4 legs are better than 2 for speed. For stability, for carrying heavy loads. Chimpanzees can move through forests faster than humans. Gorillas are stronger. Baboons can climb and run and fight better than any upright ape could. So why did we keep doing it? The usual answer is that it freed our hands. And that's true. But it's not the whole story. Standing up made us vulnerable. Our guts hung exposed. No fur to protect them. Our throats were at the perfect height for a predator's jaws. We couldn't run as fast as 4-legged animals. Couldn't climb as well as other apes. We gave up a lot to stand up, but here's what we gained. First, efficiency. Walking upright uses less energy than knuckle walking. Not much less, but enough. In a world where food was scarce, where you might walk 10 miles a day looking for something to eat, that difference mattered. You could travel farther on the same amount of food, cover more ground, find more resources. And in the African savanna where food was spread out and seasonal, that was huge. Second, thermoregulation. When you stand upright, less of your body is exposed to the sun. Your head is higher up where there's more breeze. You can walk in the heat of the day when other animals have to rest. That gave early humans a weird advantage. We could hunt by just following animals until they collapsed from heat exhaustion. We call it persistence hunting. It sounds ridiculous, but it worked. Third, visibility. Standing up let you see farther, over grass, over bushes. You could spot predators earlier, see where other animals were gathering. Notice changes in the landscape. In open country, height equals information. Information equals survival. But fourth, and this is what matters most, standing up freed our hands. Not just to carry things, not just to make tools. Those came later. First, it freed our hands to do nothing. A chimpanzee's hands are always busy, holding branches, supporting weight, knuckle walking, climbing. Their hands are tools for movement. Our hands became available, empty, ready. And once your hands are free, you can start using them for other things. You can gesture, point, show someone something. You can carry food back to share. You can hold a baby while you walk. You can pick up a stick and use it as a weapon. You can make things. The first stone tools appear in the fossil record around 3.3 million years ago. Simple flakes. Rocks deliberately broken to create sharp edges. Nothing fancy, but they worked. These tools show up before the genus Homo. Before big brains, Australopithecines probably made them, or something like Australopithecines. Upright apes with small brains and free hands. The tools didn't require much intelligence to make. You bash one rock against another. Flakes break off. Some are sharp. You use the sharp ones. But making these tools requires something specific. You need to be able to hold one rock steady while hitting it with another. You need precision, control, the ability to adjust your grip and angle. You need hands that aren't designed for climbing anymore. Hands that have short fingers and long thumbs. Hands that can grip things tightly and manipulate them carefully. You need human hands. The fossil record shows this happening around 2 million years ago. Hand bones start changing. The thumb gets longer and stronger. The fingers get shorter. The wrist bones rearrange to allow better rotation. These changes made tool-making easier, but they made climbing harder. The same adaptations that let you grip a stone tool precisely make it harder to grip a tree branch. Evolution was making a choice. Tools over trees, ground over canopy, a new way of living. Standing up also changed how we give birth. This part is important. The pelvis had to do two things at once. Support upright walking, allow babies to pass through during birth. These two requirements fight each other. Walking upright works best with a narrow pelvis. Birth works best with a wide one. Evolution had to compromise. The compromise was this: human babies are born earlier in development than other apes, more helpless, less able to survive on their own. A baby chimpanzee can cling to its mother's fur within hours. A human baby can't even hold up its own head. We're born premature by ape standards, 3 months too early. Some scientists say if we gestated as long as we should, pregnancy would last a year. But we can't. The baby's head gets too big. The pelvis can't open wide enough, so we're born early, helpless, dependent. This created a problem. A human baby needs constant care for months, years really. You can't just put it down and go find food. It'll die. So someone has to carry it, feed it, protect it, all the time. This probably pushed early humans toward more cooperation, toward sharing food, toward helping each other raise children. You can't raise a human baby alone, not easily. You need help. Maybe that's where community started. Not from intelligence, not from language, but from the simple fact that our babies were too helpless to survive without constant group support. Standing up made us social, not by choice, by necessity. The energy cost of big brains came later, but the energy cost of helpless infants came right away. A mother nursing a human baby needs more calories than a mother nursing a chimp baby. The baby nurses longer, needs more care, takes more time. That food has to come from somewhere, probably from other people. Fathers, grandmothers, siblings, the group. So standing up didn't just free our hands, it bound us together. There's something else standing up did. It changed how we see the world, literally. When you're on all fours, you look down. Your eyes scan the ground right in front of you. Your field of vision is narrow, focused on the immediate. When you stand up, you look out. Your eyes are higher, your field of vision expands. You see the horizon, the distance, the big picture. This might sound like philosophy, but it's anatomy. Your eye position determines what you pay attention to, what you think about, how you understand space and time. Standing up made us think differently. Not smarter, just different. More aware of distance, of future, of things that aren't right in front of us. Maybe that's where planning started. The ability to think about tomorrow, next week, next season. You can see farther. So you start thinking farther. The fossil record shows all this happening slowly, very slowly. The first upright apes appear 7 million years ago. The first stone tools appear 3.3 million years ago. The first big increase in brain size appears 2 million years ago. 4 million years between standing up and getting smart. 4 million years of just walking around with free hands and small brains. What were we doing all that time? Probably just surviving, walking, making simple tools, eating, raising helpless babies, cooperating because we had to, not thinking about the future, not making art, not wondering about the stars, just living. But the foundation was there, the physical setup for intelligence. We just hadn't figured out how to use it yet. That would take another 2 million years. Standing up was the first step, the foundation, the thing that made everything else possible. It seems simple, just standing up, but it cost us our speed, our climbing ability, our easy births, our independence, and it gave us free hands, social bonds, a different way of seeing, the physical foundation for intelligence. Every step you take, everything you hold, every thought you think, all of it traces back to that first ape who spent a little more time upright, who freed their hands, who saw a little farther, who took the first step toward being human. Once you're standing upright, most of the time, your hands stop being feet. They become something else. Tools for manipulation, for precision, for making things. The earliest stone tools we've found are 3.3 million years old. They come from a site in Kenya called Lomekwi 3. Simple flakes, rocks deliberately broken to create sharp edges. Nothing fancy. You take one rock, you hit it with another rock. Pieces break off. Some pieces are sharp. You keep the sharp ones. That's it. That's the whole technology. But these tools appear before the genus Homo, before big brains. Something with a brain the size of a chimpanzee made them. Small-brained apes who walked upright and had free hands. The tools themselves are crude, rough, irregular. But they worked, they cut, they scraped, they smashed. That was enough. For almost 2 million years, that was enough. Stone tools appear 3.3 million years ago. The next major innovation doesn't show up until 1.76 million years ago. That's 1.5 million years of making basically the same thing. The same rough flakes, the same simple technique. Generation after generation. For longer than modern humans have existed. Why didn't the tools improve? Maybe because they didn't need to. The tools worked. They solved the problems early humans faced. Cut meat, scrape hides, break bones to get at marrow. Process plants. If it works, why change it? But around 1.76 million years ago, something did change. A new type of tool appears. We call it the Herculean hand axe. These are different, not just sharp flakes. Deliberately shaped stones, teardrop-shaped, flaked on both sides to create a symmetrical form. Sharp edges all around. They took skill to make. Planning. You couldn't just bash two rocks together. You had to think about the shape, remove flakes in the right order, create a form that existed in your mind before it existed in the stone. This required something new, not just free hands, but hands that could execute complex sequences, brains that could plan multiple steps ahead, eyes that could judge angles and edges. The hand axe shows up right when the genus Homo appears, right when brain size starts increasing. That's not a coincidence. Bigger brains meant better tools. Better tools meant more food. More food meant bigger brains could survive. A feedback loop, each advance making the next one possible. But once the hand axe appeared, it didn't change much either. The basic design stayed the same for 1.5 million years. The same teardrop shape, the same technique. From Africa to Europe to Asia. Everywhere humans went, they made hand axes. The same hand axes. You could take a hand axe from 1.7 million years ago and one from 200,000 years ago and barely tell them apart. Different rocks, same shape, same method. This is what archaeologists call the Herculean industry. It's the longest lasting technology in human history. Nothing else comes close. Not fire, not agriculture, not writing, nothing. The hand axe worked, so it stayed. What did people do with these tools? Everything. They were the Swiss Army knife of the Stone Age. Cut meat, absolutely. A hand axe could butcher an entire elephant, slice through hide, separate joints, cut away meat from bone, scrape hides. The sharp edge could remove fat and tissue from animal skins, make them flexible, prepare them for use as clothing or shelter. Dig. The pointed end could break ground, dig up roots, excavate tubers, get at underground food sources, chop wood, sharpen sticks, make other tools. A hand axe could shape wood into spears, digging, sticks, clubs. They were general-purpose tools, not specialized, not optimized for one task, good enough for everything. And maybe that's why they didn't change. Specialization comes later, when you have enough people, enough stability, enough surplus. Early humans didn't have that. They needed tools that could do anything. The hand axe could do anything, but making one required something specific. A particular kind of hand, a particular kind of brain. Look at your hand right now, your thumb. It's long. It reaches past the first knuckle of your index finger. It can rotate. Press against each finger individually. Create a precision grip. Chimpanzees can't do this. Their thumbs are shorter, less mobile. They can grip things, but not with precision, not with fine control. Human hands evolved for toolmaking. The thumb got longer. The fingers got shorter. The muscles that control fine movements got stronger. The wrist bones rearranged to allow better rotation and manipulation. These changes show up in the fossil record around 2 million years ago. Right when hand axes appear, the hardware and software evolving together. But hands alone aren't enough. You need eyes. Specifically, you need hand-eye coordination. Making a hand axe requires you to hit a stone at exactly the right angle with exactly the right force while holding it steady, while adjusting your grip, while rotating the stone to work on different edges. You're coordinating vision, touch, motor control, spatial reasoning, and planning all at once, in real time. This requires brain power, not just size. Connectivity. The visual cortex talking to the motor cortex. The planning regions coordinating with the sensory regions. The brain had to rewire itself to make tools, new connections, new pathways, new ways of processing information. And once you have that ability, once your brain can coordinate complex hand movements based on visual feedback, you can do other things too. You can gesture, point, show someone something, use your hands to communicate. You can manipulate objects in new ways, stack things, arrange things, build things. You can teach, show someone else how to make a tool, demonstrate technique, pass on knowledge. There's another aspect of tools that matters. Social learning. You can't learn to make a hand axe by yourself. Not really. You could figure it out eventually, trial and error, but it would take forever. It's much easier if someone shows you, demonstrates, lets you watch, corrects your mistakes. This means early humans had to have some form of teaching, some way of passing on knowledge, not language necessarily, but something, demonstration, imitation, feedback. Archaeological experiments show this. Modern humans trying to learn stone toolmaking without instruction struggle. They can do it, but it takes months, years even for more complex tools. With instruction, you can learn the basics in hours, days for more complex tools. Early humans probably learned the same way, by watching, by trying, by being corrected, by practicing. This created culture, not symbolic culture, not art or ritual, but practical culture, shared knowledge. Techniques passed down, a body of information that existed outside any individual brain. The hand axe design spread across 3 continents. That required transmission, teaching, learning, copying. It required social bonds, groups stable enough to allow learning, relationships that lasted long enough to pass on skills. You can't maintain complex tool traditions without social learning, without groups, without teaching. The tools themselves are evidence of society. By 500,000 years ago, tools start getting more specialized. Different shapes for different tasks, scrapers, points, blades, cleavers. This shows increasing sophistication, better understanding of materials, better planning, better teaching. But still no art, no decoration, no symbolism, just function. Better function, more specialized function, but still just function. Tools show us what early humans could do. Plan, create, teach, learn, work together. But they also show us what early humans couldn't yet do. Imagine beyond function, create meaning, express themselves symbolically. They had the hands. They had the coordination. They had the basic intelligence. They could make things, complex things, useful things, but they couldn't yet make meaning. Every hand axe was practice. Every flake removed was training. Every technique passed down was building toward something. Building toward the moment when humans would finally use their hands, not just to make tools, but to make art. Early humans didn't hunt at first. They scavenged, found dead animals, chased away smaller predators, took what they could get, a dead antelope, a zebra killed by lions, whatever was left after the real hunters finished. This was dangerous work. Lions don't like sharing, hyenas fight back. Vultures remember your face, but the reward was worth it. Meat has calories, lots of them. Fat has even more. A single carcass could feed a group for days. The problem was getting to the good parts, The parts other scavengers couldn't reach. Big cats eat the organs first. The liver, the heart, the soft tissues, then the muscle meat. They leave the bones, the skull, the parts they can't easily access. Early humans figured out a trick. They could break bones with rocks, with tools. Inside the bones was marrow, pure fat, incredibly calorie-dense. And the big predators couldn't get to it. Their teeth couldn't crack the thick bones of large animals. But a rock could, a hand axe could, a deliberate strike in the right place. The bone splits open. The marrow is inside. Soft, rich, yours. This is what tools were really for. Getting calories, getting the food that other animals couldn't reach. The skull was even better. The brain inside is fatty, nutritious, protected by thick bone that predators can't penetrate. But humans could, with tools, with technique, with persistence. They became specialists in the leftovers, the parts nobody else wanted, the parts nobody else could access. This strategy worked. It worked so well that humans spread, followed the herds, followed the predators, followed the food. But scavenging has limits. You're always second, always waiting, always hoping something dies nearby. Hunting is better. You choose the target. You choose the timing. You control the outcome. The problem is that humans are terrible hunters. Physically, we're not fast. A human can't outrun anything worth eating. We're not strong. We can't overpower large prey. We don't have claws. We don't have big teeth. We don't have venom. What we have is endurance. We can walk forever, run for hours, keep going when other animals collapse. This led to a hunting strategy that sounds insane. Persistence hunting. You find an animal. You chase it. It runs away. Fast. You follow. Slowly. Steadily. The animal stops, rests, catches its breath. You keep coming. It runs again. You follow. Its scion stops. You follow. It runs. You follow. For hours. In the heat, in the sun, you just keep coming. Eventually the animal can't cool down. Can't rest long enough. Can't escape. It overheats, collapses, dies. Then you walk up and kill it with a rock, with a spear, with whatever you have. This works because humans can sweat. We can cool down while moving. Most animals can't. They have to stop, pant, rest. We don't. We just keep going. This hunting method requires tools, not for killing, for tracking, for carrying water, for cutting meat afterward. You need containers, bigs, something to carry water for the long chase. Early humans probably use ostrich eggs, gourds, animal bladders. You need cutting tools to butcher the kill, to carry meat back, to share with the group. You need weapons eventually, spears, pointed sticks, something to finish the job. But the real tool is your body, your legs, your sweat glands, your brain planning the route, predicting where the animal will go. Hunting changed the social structure. You can't persistence hunt alone. You need partners, people to help track, to help carry, to help with the kill. You need cooperation, communication. The meat gets shared, not equally, but shared. The hunters eat first, then the helpers, then everyone else. This creates obligations, debts, relationships. If you help me hunt today, I'll help you tomorrow. Social bonds form around meat, around hunting, around the shared effort and shared reward. But now we come to the real revolution. Cooking. Nobody knows exactly when humans started cooking. The evidence is hard to find. Fire leaves traces. But controlled fire is different from wildfire. Cooking fire is different from warming fire. The earliest definite evidence of controlled fire is about 400,000 years old. From a site in Israel, Kesem Cave, hearths, burned bones, repeated use of the same spots. But fire might be much older. Some researchers claim evidence going back 1.5 million years. Others are skeptical. The evidence is ambiguous. It could be natural fire, could be accidental. What matters is that at some point humans started cooking, and cooking changed everything. Raw meat is hard to digest. It's tough, chewy. Your stomach has to work hard to break it down. You spend a lot of energy digesting. Cooked meat is different. The heat breaks down proteins, denatures them, makes them easier to digest. Your body gets more calories for less effort. The same is true for plants. Raw tubers are hard, fibrous, difficult to chew and digest. Cooked tubers are soft, easy. Your body can extract the calories efficiently. Cooking is essentially pre-digestion. You're using fire to do work your stomach would otherwise have to do. This means more calories. More energy, more fuel for your body, and humans needed fuel because something was happening to their brains. Brain tissue is expensive. It burns calories constantly. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight, but uses 20% of your calories. Just sitting there, just thinking. Bigger brains need more fuel, a lot more fuel. You can't support a big brain on a raw food diet. There aren't enough hours in the day to eat that much. Chimpanzees spend about 6 hours a day chewing. Gorillas spend it even more. They're constantly eating, constantly processing food. Humans don't. We spend maybe an hour eating, maybe two if we're feasting. The difference is cooking. Cooked food gives us more calories in less time, frees up time for other things, allows us to support bigger, hungrier brains. There's a researcher named Richard Wrangham who argues that cooking made us human. That controlled fire was the key innovation, the thing that allowed brain size to explode. He points out that human guts are small, smaller than you'd expect for a primate our size. We have short digestive tracts, small stomachs, small colons. This only makes sense if our food is pre-processed, pre-digested, cooked. Other researchers disagree. They point out that brain size started increasing before the earliest definite evidence of cooking. That meat alone might explain it, but everyone agrees cooking helped, made things easier, more efficient, more reliable. Cooking also changed social life. You can't cook alone. Well, you can, but it's inefficient. Fire takes work to maintain. You need fuel, someone to gather wood, someone to keep it going. Cooking takes time. You can't just grab food and eat. You have to prepare it, wait for it, attend it. This creates gathering points, places where people come together. Around the fire, around the food, stories get told, information gets shared, relationships form. The fire becomes the center of social life. Even today, we gather around fire, around stoves, around grills. It's deep, instinctive, ancient. But cooking did something else too. It created roles, division of labor. Someone gathers plants, someone hunts, someone maintains the fire, someone prepares the food, someone watches the children. Not everyone does everything. People specialize, get good at specific tasks, contribute in different ways. This requires coordination, planning, communication. Trust that everyone will do their part. It creates interdependence. You need the group needs you. Nobody survives alone. Meat and cooking together created a feedback loop. More meat meant more calories. More calories supported bigger brains. Bigger brains meant better hunting. Better hunting meant more meat. Cooking amplified this, made the calories more accessible, made the brains even bigger, made the hunting even better. By 500,000 years ago, human brains were approaching modern size. Not quite there, but close. Much bigger than earlier humans. Much bigger than any other primate. This brain growth came at a cost. Human babies are born helpless, more helpless than other primates, because their brains are so big. A baby's head barely fits through the birth canal. Any bigger in birth would be impossible. So humans are born early, underdeveloped, vulnerable. They need care, constant care. For years, they can't cling to their mothers like other primates, can't move on their own, can't feed themselves. This creates another feedback loop. Helpless babies need more care. More care requires more cooperation. More cooperation requires better communication. Better communication supports cultural learning. The whole system reinforces itself, each part making the others possible. Meat, cooking, tools, big brains, helpless babies, social cooperation, all of it connected. All of it necessary, but something was still dormant, still waiting. These humans with their big brains, their tools, their hunting, their cooking, their social cooperation. They had everything they needed, everything except one thing. The brain explosion happened fast. In evolutionary terms, around 2 million years ago, early human brains were about 600 cubic centimeters, roughly the size of a chimpanzee brain, maybe a bit bigger. By 1.5 million years ago, they'd grown to about 800 cubic centimeters. That's a 30% increase in 500,000 years. By 500,000 years ago, human brains averaged 1,200 cubic centimeters, getting close to modern size. By 200,000 years ago, they hit 1,400 cubic centimeters, basically modern, the same size as yours right now. That's a journey from 600 to 1,400 in less than 2 million years, more than doubling in size. Getting bigger, heavier, hungrier. This is weird, really weird. Brain growth this fast is almost unheard of in evolutionary history. Most animals evolve slowly, gradually, small changes over millions of years, tiny adjustments, incremental shifts. But human brains exploded, shot up, ballooned, like something was pushing them, pulling them, forcing them to grow. The question is why? What was driving this? What advantage did big brains provide? The obvious answer is intelligence. Bigger brains have meant smarter humans. Smarter humans survived better, had more children, passed on their big brain genes. But it's not that simple. Brain size and intelligence don't match up perfectly, not even close. Neanderthals had bigger brains than modern humans, about 1,500 cubic centimeters on average. But we don't think they were smarter than us, just different. Whales have huge brains, elephants too, but they're not building cities, not writing poetry, not launching rockets. Brain size matters, but it's not the whole story. Structure matters, organization, the way the parts connect, the density of neurons, the efficiency of processing. Still, human brains grew, and that growth required fuel, lots of it. This is where the meat and cooking come back in. They provided the calories, the energy budget, the fuel to run these expensive organs. But there's another piece, another cost that came with bigger brains. Birth. Human babies have big heads, huge heads relative to body size. Those big brains have to fit through the birth canal somehow. The problem is that humans also walk upright on two legs. This changes the shape of the pelvis, narrows it, makes the birth canal smaller. So you've got bigger heads trying to squeeze through a narrower opening. Something had to give. The solution evolution found was to birth babies early, before their brains finished growing, while their skulls were still soft, still flexible. This works, barely. Human birth is difficult, dangerous, more dangerous than for most other mammals. But it works. The cost is that human babies are born helpless, completely dependent, can't walk, can't cling, can't feed themselves, can't do anything. A newborn horse can walk within hours. A newborn deer can run within a day. A newborn chimpanzee can cling to its mother immediately. A human baby just lies there, crying, needing constant care for months, years, a decade or more before it can truly survive on its own. This is called altriciality, being born underdeveloped, helpless, requiring extended care. Most primates aren't this altricial. They're born more developed, more capable, more independent. But humans took it to an extreme. Our babies are the most helpless of all primates, maybe the most helpless of all mammals. This created a massive problem. How do you care for a helpless infant while also finding food, avoiding predators, surviving? You can't do it alone. Impossible. A mother with a newborn can't hunt, can't gather efficiently, can't move fast, can't fight. She needs help, support, protection. Food brought to her, someone to watch the baby while she rests. This means cooperation, extended family, group living, social bonds that go beyond mating. Fathers had to stick around. Grandmothers had to help. Siblings had to contribute. The whole group had to invest in each baby. This is unusual. Most mammals don't do this. The mother handles it, maybe with some help from relatives. But not this level of group investment. Humans had no choice. The big brains demanded it. The helpless babies required it. The long childhood enforced it. And now we get to something interesting. This created a feedback loop, a cycle that reinforced itself. Helpless babies need more care. More care requires better cooperation. Better cooperation requires better communication. Better communication requires bigger brains. Bigger brains make babies more helpless. Round and round, each generation slightly more dependent, slightly more social, slightly bigger brained. This is called the social brain hypothesis. The idea that brains grew to manage social complexity, to track relationships, remember obligations, predict behavior, navigate group dynamics. Living in groups is complicated. You need to remember who helped you, who owes you, who you can trust, who might betray you, who's allied with whom, who has power, who's vulnerable. This takes processing power. Memory, theory of mind, the ability to imagine what others are thinking, planning, feeling, wanting. The bigger the group, the more complex the social web. The more you need to track, the more brain power required. Human groups got bigger, not huge, but bigger than most primates. Maybe 50 to 150 individuals, enough to need serious social intelligence. Some researchers think this is the main driver. That social complexity pushed brain growth more than anything else, more than tools, more than hunting, more than language. Others disagree. Point out that other social animals don't have huge brains. That group living alone can't explain it. The truth is probably that everything worked together. Tools, meat, cooking, social cooperation, communication, helpless babies, all of it. But here's the really weird part. This brain growth happened in stages, in jumps, not smooth and gradual. Around 2 million years ago, there's a jump. Brains suddenly get bigger. This matches with the appearance of Homo erectus, the first truly human-like species. Around 600,000 years ago, another jump. Brains grow again, approaching modern size. This is when fire use becomes more common, when hunting improved. Around 200,000 years ago, brains hit modern size. This is when Homo sapiens appears, when humans who looked exactly like us show up in the fossil record. But then something strange happens. The growth stops, levels off, stays at 1,400 cubic centimeters. For 200,000 years, human brains don't get bigger. They actually get slightly smaller. Modern humans average about 1,350 cubic centimeters, a bit less than early Homo sapiens. Why did growth stop? Why not keep going? One answer is cost. Brains are expensive. They burn calories constantly. About 20% of your total energy goes to your brain, just to keep it running. Bigger brains would cost more, require more food, more hunting, more gathering, more cooking, more time spent just getting enough to eat. There's a limit, a point where the costs outweigh the benefits, where bigger brains don't help enough to justify the extra calories. Humans might have hit that limit, found the sweet spot, the size that balances intelligence against ground. Another answer is birth. Baby heads can't get much bigger. The pelvis can't get much wider without breaking the mechanics of walking upright. We're already at the edge. Birth is already difficult, dangerous. Any bigger and it might be impossible. So brain growth stopped, not because it couldn't continue, but because the constraints got too tight, the cost too high, the risks too great. But the brains we have are impressive, packed with neurons, about 86 billion of them, each connected to thousands of others, creating trillions of connections, unimaginable complexity. The human brain has more neurons than any other primate, more connections, more processing power, more potential. But for most of human history, that potential sat dormant. Humans with modern-sized brains lived for 190,000 years without creating much of anything. No art, no culture, no symbolic thinking we can detect. They had the brains, the intelligence, the social cooperation, the communication. But one thing was still missing. Some final piece, some spark that would ignite all that potential. The stage was set. The pieces were in place. The brains were ready. Something just needed to flip the switch, turn on the light, activate the potential that was waiting. That moment was coming. Let's talk about genes for a second. Genes are the instruction manual for building a body. They're little stretches of DNA that tell cells what to do. How tall you'll be, what color your hair is, how your brain gets wired up. Most genes are really old. They go way back, shared with fish, birds, even bacteria. But every now and then a change pops up, a tiny typo in the genetic code. Most changes don't do much. Some are bad, but sometimes a single change can have a huge effect. FOXP2 is one of those genes. It's not famous like the gene for eye color, but it does something even more important. It helps control how our brains develop for speech and language. How do we know this? Scientists first noticed it in a family in England. The family was called the K family. Most of the members spoke normally, but about half of them struggled with speech. Not just a lisp or a stutter. They couldn't form words right. They had trouble with grammar, trouble moving their mouths in the right way. It was like their brains and mouths weren't connecting. Doctors ran test after test. Then in the 1990s, geneticists found the cause. The affected family members all had a single change in one gene. That gene was FOXP2. This was a big deal. It showed that one tiny spot in our DNA could mess up language. Not just the sound, but the rules, the patterns, the ability to put words together in a sentence. Consider this. There are more than 3 billion letters in the human genome. One letter changed, and a person loses the ability to speak and understand language smoothly. So what does FOXP2 do exactly? It acts like a switch. It turns on other genes that help build nerve cells in the brain, especially in places linked to speech. Movement, language. If the switch is broken, speech gets broken too. But FOXP2 isn't just found in humans. It's in mice, birds, even fish. Every animal with a backbone has some version of it, but the human version is special. We have two changes, just two little letters that are different from chimpanzees. That doesn't sound like much. Two changes out of thousands of letters. But those two changes seem to make all the difference. Scientists compared human FOXP2 with the version in chimpanzees. Chimpanzees can make sounds. They can communicate, but they can't speak. They can't use grammar or string together sentences. They can't tell stories. When they put the human version of FOXP2 into mice, those mice started making slightly different squeaks. Their brains wired up a bit differently. It wasn't speech, not really, but it was a clue. In songbirds, FOXP2 is even more interesting. Young birds need this gene to learn their songs. If you block it, they can't learn the right notes. They mess up the patterns. Their brains don't wire up for song. So FOXP2 is old. It's been helping animals learn sounds for a long time. But in humans, it seems to have gotten a power-up. A couple of tiny tweaks, and now we can talk. Now we come to timing. When did these changes appear? Did Neanderthals have them? Did earlier humans? Scientists started digging for answers. They looked at ancient DNA from Neanderthals. And this is where it gets surprising. Neanderthals had the same two changes in FOXP2 as modern humans. That was unexpected. It meant the gene didn't appear out of nowhere. It had been around for at least 400,000 years. But then why didn't Neanderthals develop language like us? Maybe they did, in their own way. Maybe FOXP2 was necessary but not enough on its own. Maybe other genes were required too. Maybe culture played a role, or maybe the way their brains were organized made a difference. Still, FOXP2 stands out. It's a piece of the puzzle. It shows that the machinery for speech was being built long before cave art appeared. FOXP2 helps build brain circuits, especially in an area called Broca's area. This spot is on the left side of your brain, just above the temple. It's the control room for speech. If you damage it, you can't form words right. Your grammar falls apart. You know what you want to say, but you can't get the words out. FOXP2 is also active in the basal ganglia. That's a deep part of the brain that helps with movement and habits. Speaking isn't just about thinking, it's about moving the lips, tongue, throat in a precise dance. One slip and the word comes out wrong. Think about how fast you talk. You string together sounds at lightning speed. Your brain has to plan each movement, every syllable, every pause. FOXP2 helps make that possible. But there's another twist. FOXP2 is also linked to learning. When children learn to talk, they listen. They copy. They practice over and over. If FOXP2 isn't working right, that learning gets blocked. The child can't pick up the patterns, even with practice. So if you think of language as a symphony, FOXP2 is like the conductor. It makes sure everyone's playing together. If the conductor's missing, the music falls apart. But a conductor can't make music alone. You need instruments, you need musicians, you need a score to follow. FOXP2 wasn't the only gene involved, but it was one of the first to show how a simple change could set the stage for language. Now scientists have found other genes that play a part. Some help with hearing, some help with memory, some help with the muscles of the mouth and face. But FOXP2 is the star of the show, the first piece that pointed toward a genetic link to language. Let's look at the evidence beyond genes. What about the skull? The bones of the head and throat. Speech isn't just about the brain, it's about the hardware too. Human skulls are different from other apes. The base of the skull is angled in a way that allows for a longer vocal tract. The tongue sits lower. The larynx or voice box is lower in the throat. This lets us make more sounds, more vowels, more consonants, more variety. Neanderthals had a similar skull base. Their hyoid bone, the little bone in the throat that anchors the tongue, looked almost the same as ours. Some researchers think Neanderthals could speak, at least in some way. But there are differences: the shape of the mouth, the size of the nasal cavity, the way the chin sticks out. These small changes might have made a big difference in the sounds we could make. It's hard to know for sure. Soft tissue doesn't fossilize. Then there's the question of culture. Even with the right skull and the right genes, you need a reason to talk. You need other people who will listen. You need something to say. For a long time, early humans might have used simple sounds, grunts, cries, laughter, maybe a few basic words, but something changed. Language exploded. Suddenly, people could string together ideas, ask questions, tell stories, teach each other new skills. FOXP2 didn't create this out of thin air, but it opened the door. It made complex speech possible. What does all this tell us about the moment humans learned to talk? It looks like language needed a perfect storm. The right genes, the right brain wiring, the right physical changes, the right social setting. FOXP2 was a big part of it, but it wasn't the only player. Other genes have been found that affect language. CNTNAP2, for example, is linked to the way nerves connect in the brain. KIAA0319 helps with reading and writing. DCDC2 affects how we hear sounds. It's a whole orchestra of genes playing together. But FOXP2 is the one that stands out. The one that showed us language is built into our DNA. What about our closest relatives? Chimpanzees can't talk. Even if they're raised with humans, they can learn simple signs. They can understand a few spoken words, but they can't produce speech. Their FOXP2 gene is just a little different. But that tiny difference is enough. Bonobos, gorillas, orangutans, it's the same story. No speech, no grammar, no true language, just gestures and simple sounds. The two key changes in FOXP2 probably appeared around 500,000 years ago, maybe a bit earlier. That's long before cave art, long before agriculture, long before cities. Neanderthals and Denisovans had those same changes, but something still separated us. Maybe it was how the gene was turned on and off. Maybe it was other genes working together. Maybe it was culture or luck. But genes aren't everything. Think about sign language. Deaf children invent their own signs, even if nobody teaches them. If you put a group of deaf kids together, they'll invent a new language in a few years, with grammar, with rules, with creativity. The brain wants to communicate. FOXP2 just makes it easier. Let's talk about what language actually does for us. Why is it so powerful? It lets us share ideas, teach skills, warn about danger, plan for the future, remember the past, lie, joke, comfort each other. Language can be simple, point and grunt, or it can be complex. Stories, poetry, laws. It can build trust or spread rumors. It can unite a group or start a fight. With language, you don't have to see something to know it's real. Someone can tell you about a herd of animals over the hill, about a storm coming, about a fire in the distance. You can learn from people you never met, from ancestors you never saw. FOXP2 helped unlock all that. It didn't invent speech, but it made it possible. Think about children. By age 3, most kids can speak in sentences. By age 4 or 5, they invent stories. By age 6, they know thousands of words, all without formal lessons. The brain is hungry for language, built to learn it, designed to share it. If the FOXP2 gene is broken, that window closes. Words become hard to learn. Patterns don't make sense. The world gets quieter. Language didn't appear overnight. It wasn't a light switch. It was more like a dawn, a slow brightening. At first, maybe just a few words, then short sentences, then stories, then poetry, then laws and myths and songs. FOXP2's changes were a big part of that dawn. Not the whole sunrise, but the first light. By the time art and symbols start appearing in the record, by the time humans are painting caves and carving statues, the hardware for language was already there. The genes, the brain wiring, the throat, the mouth, all ready to go. Every time you speak, every time you tell a story or ask a question, you're using a system built by millions of years of evolution and powered in part by these tiny changes in your DNA. FOXP2 didn't just shape language, it shaped everything that came after. Art, history, science, love, war, all of it built on the foundation of words. And as language grew, so did everything else. Stories spread, ideas moved, cultures connected. But language alone wasn't enough. There was another piece, another accident, the ability to imagine, to believe things that aren't right in front of us. That's an even stranger trick. Think about what imagination actually means. It's being able to picture something in your mind that isn't real, or isn't real yet. Sometimes it's a memory. Sometimes it's a dream of the future. Sometimes it's something that never happened at all. No other animal on Earth really does this the way we do. Sure, dogs can dream. Apes might plan simple things like using a stick to get ants. But only humans can invent whole worlds. We picture spirits in the wind, monsters in the dark, heroes fighting battles that never happen. We imagine gods, rules, stories that shape millions of lives. Where did this ability come from? Was it just language that made it possible? Or was there something else? Maybe another twist in our DNA that flipped a new switch in our brains. Your brain isn't just one lump of thought. It's a web of different parts, all connected. Some parts handle vision, some handle memory, others handle language, movement, emotion. For imagination, you need many of these areas talking to each other at once. There's a special network deep inside your brain called the default mode network. You can think of it as your daydream engine. It's what lights up when you're not focused on the outside world. You might be staring at the ceiling, thinking about nothing, but inside your brain is busy. It's replaying memories, building new ideas, stitching together pictures that don't exist. This network is much more active in humans than in any other animal. In fact, it's one of the things that makes our brains unique. When you imagine, plan, remember. This part of your brain is hard at work. So what does this have to do with genes? The same explosion of culture that brought us cave art, jewelry, music. It also lines up with changes in certain genes, not just FOXP2, but others that help wire up the brain for creativity and imagination. One gene that's come under the spotlight is called HAR1. That stands for Human Accelerated Region 1. It's a stretch of DNA that changed very quickly after humans split from chimps. Most parts of our DNA change slowly, but HAR1 picked up more than a dozen changes in a short window of time. What does HAR1 do? It helps build the brain's cortex, the wrinkly outer layer where thinking happens. In other words, it helps set up the hardware for complex thought. Scientists think changes in HAR1 made it easier for our brains to grow more connections. More connections mean more ways to link ideas, memories, feelings. Other genes also play a part. There's SRGAP2, which doubled itself in our ancestors. That extra copy gave our brain cells longer arms to reach out and connect with other cells. More connections, more imagination. Then there's the gene ARHGB. This one is only found in humans and our closest extinct cousins. It helps the brain grow more progenitor cells during development, which means a bigger, smarter brain. But having a big brain isn't enough. Elephants and whales have big brains too. What seems to matter is how those brains are wired. The human brain is packed with connections. It's almost like a city lit up at night, with lights flickering in every direction. Imagination comes from all those lights talking to each other. What does imagination actually do for us? Why did it matter so much in the ancient world? First, it lets us solve problems. If you can picture a trap before you build it, you are more likely to catch dinner. If you can imagine someone else's feelings, you're less likely to get in a fight, or you're better at making friends. Imagination lets you test ideas in your mind before risking your life for real. Second, it lets us work together in new ways. Think about a hunting party. Instead of just reacting to what's in front of you, you can plan. I'll hide here. You scare the animals this way. We'll trap them together. That's not just instinct. That's imagination and trust. Third, it lets us believe in things that aren't physically there. This might sound simple, but it changes everything. Money is just a piece of paper. But if everyone believes in it, it works. Laws are just words. But if a whole group agrees to follow them, you get order instead of chaos. Even more basic than that, imagination lets us create stories. Stories are glue that binds groups. They teach lessons. They pass down wisdom. They make people feel connected even when they're strangers. So did imagination just appear one day? Probably not. It was a slow build, but some scientists think there was a tipping point, a moment when our brains crossed a line. Maybe it was a single gene tweaking the way connections formed. Maybe it was a few changes working together. Suddenly, the lights turned on brighter than ever before. Let's break down what makes imagination special. There are a few key parts: memory, prediction, creativity. Memory is the foundation. You remember what happened before, but imagination takes it further. You remix memories into something new. Maybe you remember a lion chasing you last year. Now you imagine what would happen if two lions showed up. Or you picture a safe hiding place you've never actually seen. Prediction is next. If you can imagine what might happen tomorrow, you're better at surviving. You plan for winter, you store food, you avoid places where you once saw danger. Then comes creativity. This is where you invent things that aren't just copies of the past. Maybe you paint a picture of a horse with 7 legs. Or you invent a tool no one's ever used before. Or you tell a story about a hero who never existed. Children are experts at this. Watch any group of kids playing. They invent whole worlds. They turn sticks into swords, rocks into treasure, clouds into dragons. That's the imagination gene at work. But what about belief? This is the weirdest part of human thinking. We can believe things that aren't real, yet act as if they are. Sometimes that's helpful. You believe in your team, so you try harder. You believe in bad luck, so you avoid certain actions. Sometimes it's dangerous. People can believe in curses or monsters or enemies that don't exist. Still, belief is powerful. It lets humans form groups around shared ideas. It lets us build religions, nations, traditions. No other animal does this at our level. Some scientists think this leap in belief came from the same changes that boosted imagination. When the brain is wired to picture things that aren't there, it's easy to start believing in them too. There's evidence for this in the archaeological record. Around 50,000 years ago, we see a burst of strange objects. Beads, statues, carved bones. Some of these objects seem magical. Tiny animal figures with no use except to hold or look at. Painted hands on cave walls. Footprints left behind for no reason but to say I was here. It's not just art for art's sake. These objects show imagination at work. Someone pictured something new and made it real. Scientists scanned the brains of people as they imagine things. They found that the same areas light up whether you're seeing something for real or just picturing it in your mind. In other words, your brain treats imagination almost like reality. That's why a scary story can make your heart pound, even if you know it's fake. That's why you can wake up from a dream sweating even though nothing really happened. That's the power of this new brain wiring. But is this ability unique to modern humans? Or did our extinct cousins have it too? Neanderthals left behind some clues. They made tools that were more advanced than those of earlier humans. They used pigments, maybe for body paint. They even buried their dead. But most scientists agree that Neanderthals didn't make the same kind of symbolic art we did. No animal-headed statues, no painted stories on cave walls. Maybe their imagination just didn't reach as far. There's a theory that imagination and belief gave us a survival edge. If you can picture the future, you can avoid danger. If you can tell a story about why the river floods, you can protect your group from disaster. If you believe in a shared symbol like a totem or a flag, you can unite hundreds of people who don't know each other. Imagination also brings risk. When you can picture things that aren't real, you can worry about things that might never happen. Anxiety, fear of the unknown, doubts. These are all side effects of our creative brains, but overall the benefits are huge. What other genes might be involved in imagination? One is called COMT. It controls how your brain uses dopamine, a chemical that helps with thinking and feeling good. Some people have a version that makes them more creative. Others have a version that makes them better at focus and planning. Another gene is DRD4. It's been linked to curiosity and risk-taking. People with certain versions of DARD4 are more likely to explore new places, try new things, invent new tools. There's also BDNF, which helps your brain grow and change throughout life. High levels of BDNF seem to make people more flexible in their thinking, better at making new connections, imagining new ideas. But it's not just one gene, it's a whole network. Genes set up the hardware. Life experience shapes how the wiring gets used. Culture, family, learning, all add layers. It's a bit like having a fancy computer. Genes build a machine. But what you do with it, what programs you run, what games you play, what stories you write, that's up to life. Let's look at some real-world examples of imagination at work. First, cave art. The oldest known cave paintings are over 40,000 years old. Some are in Europe, some in Indonesia. They show animals, hands, even scenes that look like hunting or dancing. Why paint on the walls? No one knows for sure. Maybe it was for magic, maybe to teach others, maybe just for beauty. Either way, these paintings show someone could imagine something, then make it real for others to see. Next, burial rituals. Early humans started burying their dead with objects, beads, tools, even flowers. This suggests they imagined an afterlife, or at least cared about remembering. It's not just instinct, it's belief. Stories are another example. Oral tales passed down for thousands of years, myths about the stars, the seasons, the spirits in the forest, stories that explain where we come from, who we are, what's possible. Even today, humans are wired for story. We see faces in clouds, patterns in stars, meaning in random events. Our brains crave narrative. That's imagination in action. So why did this leap happen? Some scientists think it was a random mutation, a lucky roll of the genetic dice. Others think it was pressure from the environment. Life got harder. So imagination became a tool for survival. Maybe both are true. Imagination lets us step outside ourselves. We can picture what someone else is thinking or feeling. That's called theory of mind. It's what makes empathy possible. It's why you can feel bad for someone in a story. Even if they're made up, animals show glimmers of this, but humans take it to a whole new level. We can guess what others will do. We can lie, bluff, act to change their minds. This ability made trade, trust, teamwork possible. It's the root of every friendship, every alliance, and every betrayal. There's also a downside. Imagination can feed paranoia, jealousy, fear, but it also makes forgiveness, hope, love stronger. It's a double-edged sword. Scientists have tried to measure imagination. They use tests where people are asked to invent uses for common objects or to tell stories about pictures. People with brain injuries sometimes lose this ability. Their world becomes flat, full of facts but no color. Imagination can be fragile. It needs the right wiring, the right chemicals, the right spark from the world outside. One famous case is the story of feral children, kids raised with almost no human contact, without people to talk to, play with, learn from. Their imagination stays small. It's like a fire that never gets enough wood. This shows that genes give us the tools, but life gives us the fuel. What does this mean for who we are? Imagination is at the heart of being human. It lets us dream, hope, build things that never existed. It lets us connect with others, even across time and space. It's the reason we have books, movies, music, games. But it's also the reason we can worry about tomorrow or feel sad about things that never happened. It's the reason we can love people we've never met or miss places we've never been. Our ability to imagine is both a gift and a challenge, and something beautiful. Every child everywhere in the world is born with the seeds of imagination. Some will paint, some will tell stories, some will invent tools, some will just dream. It's not just artists or writers. Every time you picture a better future, every time you solve a problem, every time you wonder what if, that's imagination at work. So was there really an imagination gene? Not one single gene? No, but a whole set of changes working together that made our brains more flexible, more creative, more able to believe in things we can't see. This is what let us become more than just another animal. It's what let us become human in a deeper way. And even though we don't know exactly when this leap happened or what triggered it, we can see its fingerprints everywhere. In every cave painting, every conding, every myth, every dream. You could say the imagination gene is still working today. Every time you close your eyes and picture something new. The story of imagination isn't finished either. We keep inventing, dreaming, believing. We build worlds inside our heads, then try to make them real. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we change everything. And the best part, we're not alone in this journey. For a long time, we shared the world with other human species. Neanderthals, Denisovans, maybe others we haven't found yet. The story of imagination is about all of us. Every branch of the family tree, every spark of creativity. Some burned out, some burned bright. But the leap into imagination and belief changed the world forever. For most of our history, we shared the world with other kinds of humans. Not just one or two, but a whole family tree of cousins. Neanderthals, Denisovans, maybe even more that we haven't found yet. It's wild to think about. If you were alive 50,000 years ago, you might have run into someone who looked almost like you, but not quite. Their faces were a bit different. Their bodies were sometimes stronger, sometimes shorter, but they walked upright, made tools, and in many ways lived a life not so different from yours. Let's try to picture the world back then. Europe wasn't a quiet place. It was cold, full of ice and forests. Neanderthals lived there for hundreds of thousands of years before modern humans showed up. In Asia, Denisovans were holding on in places like Siberia, and maybe further south. In Africa, our own ancestors were spreading out, learning new tricks. The evidence is in the bones. Archaeologists have dug up Neanderthal skeletons in Spain, France, Germany, and beyond. Denisovan bones are rare. Just a finger, a few teeth, a piece of skull. But their DNA tells a bigger story. It shows they were a real branch of the human family. Not just a footnote. For a long time, scientists thought we were totally different from these cousins. The story went like this. Neanderthals were slow, simple, doomed to die out. Denisovans were mysterious and vanished before anyone knew much about them. Modern humans were the heroes, the clever ones who invented everything and outlasted everyone else. But the evidence doesn't fit that old story anymore. Turns out our cousins were smart in their own ways. Neanderthals made sharp tools called Victorian tools. They used fire, built shelters, even made glue from tree bark to fix stone points onto wooden handles. That's not mindless copying, that's problem solving. Some Neanderthal sites show signs of planning. In Brunico Cave in France, archaeologists found a circle made from broken stalagmites deep underground, in total darkness. Someone hauled these heavy stones, stacked them in shapes, maybe even lit fires around them. The structure is over 175,000 years old. That's 120,000 years before the oldest cave paintings we know about. What does that mean? It means Neanderthals could work together and imagine something that didn't exist before. Maybe it was a shelter. Maybe it was for rituals. We don't know, but it's not something you do by accident. And then there's the jewelry. In Spain, scientists found eagle talons with cut marks on them, like someone was turning them into necklaces or ornaments. Some shells have traces of pigments, maybe used as paint. These finds are over 40,000 years old, before modern humans reached that part of Europe. Some people think this is proof that Neanderthals had art, or at least cared about beauty. Others say it's not quite the same as the paintings and statues made by modern humans. But one thing is clear, they were doing more than just surviving. Let's talk about burial. There are Neanderthal graves with bodies placed carefully in the ground, sometimes with flowers or tools. Did they believe in an afterlife, or was it just respect for the dead? We can't ask them, but it shows they thought about death in a way that goes beyond instinct. Now, what about Denisovans? The truth is we know less about them. They left almost no art or tools behind that we can be sure of. But their DNA is everywhere. If you have ancestors from Asia or Oceania, you probably have a little Denisovan DNA in your blood. That means our species met, talked, and sometimes had children together. That's not just a theory. Scientists can read it in our genes. If you look at people from Papua New Guinea, up to 5% of their DNA comes from Denisovans. In East Asians, it's less, about 0.2%. Even people from Europe and the Americas have small amounts. Neanderthal DNA is even more common. Almost everyone outside Africa has about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Some people have more, some a little less. These aren't just numbers. They're living proof that our ancestors and our cousins met and mixed and left a mark on each other. When scientists looked at the Neanderthal genome, they found some chunks of DNA that are almost never seen in modern humans. These pieces are missing because they made people less healthy or less able to have children over time. Those genes faded out. But some Neanderthal genes stuck around. They helped fight off diseases or survive in cold weather. For example, there's a gene that controls how your skin reacts to sunlight. People with Neanderthal versions of this gene can handle less sunlight without getting burned. That's handy if you live in cloudy northern places. Another gene from Neanderthals helps your body fight off viruses, especially ones that attack the immune system. During the COVID-19 pandemic, scientists found that having a certain Neanderthal gene could make the disease worse. But another Neanderthal gene seemed to protect against it. It's a reminder that these ancient encounters still shape our lives today. But let's get back to the big question. How did these different humans interact? What was it like when two branches of the human family met in a forest, by a river, in a cave? The evidence says it happened more than once. In Europe, modern humans and Neanderthals shared the land for thousands of years. There are layers in caves where you see Neanderthal tools, then modern human tools, then Neanderthal ones again. Sometimes both kinds of tools are found in the same layer, as if the groups were living side by side. Some scientists even think they traded ideas. For example, after modern humans arrived in Europe, Neanderthal tools got more complex. They started making smaller blades, even using bone and antler for points. Maybe they copied what they saw, or maybe the two groups worked together for a while. But it wasn't all sharing and peace. There's also evidence of violence. Some Neanderthal skulls show signs of injuries, maybe from fighting, but that's not proof of war. It could be from hunting accidents, or even accidents in daily life. Still, it's likely there was tension, maybe even competition for food and shelter. One thing is certain, these meetings changed both groups. Neanderthals started to disappear about 40,000 years ago. By 30,000 years ago, they were gone. Denisovans lasted longer in some places, but they too vanished. Why did our cousins die out while we survived? That's one of the biggest mysteries in science. Some say it was climate change, a series of cold snaps that made life impossible in Europe and Asia. Others say it was disease brought by modern humans from Africa. Still others think it was competition for resources, or even just bad luck. But maybe the answer is more complicated. Maybe it wasn't just one thing. Maybe it was a mix of tough weather, shifting food sources, and new people arriving with different skills. There's another piece of evidence, tools and art from the time when Neanderthals and modern humans lived together. In France, at a cave called Châtel-Perronien, archaeologists found layers of tools that mix styles from both groups. Some bone points look like classic modern human tools, but they're found with Neanderthal remains. Were Neanderthals copying what they saw? Or was there real exchange, people teaching each other how to make new things? No one can say for sure. But it looks like the boundary between us and them wasn't always clear. Let's not forget the Denisovans. In a cave in Siberia called Denisova Cave, scientists made an amazing discovery. They found the bone of a girl who had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. That's right. She was a first-generation hybrid. It's not just mixing over thousands of years, but real families, with parents from two branches of the human family tree. Other fossils from the same cave show Denisovans and Neanderthals lived there. Maybe at the same time, maybe in turns. The cave was used for over 250,000 years. That's longer than the entire history of modern civilization. Genetics tells us even more. Some genes from the Denisovans help people today survive at high altitudes. For example, Tibetans have a special version of a gene called EPAS1. It lets them live and work where the air is thin, like on the Tibetan plateau. This gene came from Denisovans, not from modern humans. Without it, life above 14,000 feet would be much harder. So the mixing of humans wasn't just random. It gave us real advantages. It let our species adapt to new places, new diseases, new climates. But at the same time, something about us was different. Even with all this mixing, something about our brains, our culture, our imagination gave us the edge. We made art that lasted. We built bigger networks. We told stories that pulled people together. Let's zoom out and see just how many kinds of humans there were. At least 4 or 5 branches lived at the same time. In Indonesia, there was Homo floresiensis, sometimes called the Hobbit because they were less than 4 feet tall. In the Philippines, scientists found Homo luzonensis, another small human with weird teeth and bones. In southern Africa, there's evidence for a group called Homo naledi. Each group had its own way of living. Some made simple tools, others made complex ones. Some stayed in small groups, others may have formed bigger bands. Now picture the world as a patchwork. Different types of humans, each with their own customs and ideas, sometimes meeting, sometimes avoiding each other, sometimes mixing. It wasn't a straight line from ape to modern human. It was more like a tangled bush, with branches crossing and twisting together. In Israel, archaeologists found caves where Neanderthals and modern humans both lived. Sometimes their bones are only a few feet apart, but they're separated by thousands of years. It's as if the land itself remembers the meetings and the goodbyes. What about language? Did Neanderthals talk like us? That's a tough one. Their skulls show they had the right shape for speech, bones for hearing, jaws for making sounds. The FOXP2 gene, the one linked to language, was almost the same in Neanderthals as in OS. Maybe they spoke, but their language was simpler, or less creative, or maybe it was just different. No one has found Neanderthal writing or clear symbols like the ones modern humans left behind. But absence of evidence isn't proof they didn't have language. Maybe their words were never written down. Maybe their stories were lost in time. Let's look at the evidence for group size. Modern humans seem to live in bigger groups than Neanderthals. Archaeologists think Neanderthal groups were usually small, maybe 10 to 20 people, sometimes 30. Modern humans, though, form bands of 50 or more. Bigger groups mean more ideas, more sharing, more chances for creativity. That could be a big reason why we survived and others didn't. It's easier to weather tough times with a big group. You can share food, care for children, pass on knowledge. If one person has a new idea, it spreads faster. Now, what about culture? Modern humans seem to have more layers, more art, more trade, more long-distance travel. In Africa, beads made from ostrich eggshells are found hundreds of miles from where they were made. That means people were trading, or at least traveling far from home. Neanderthals mostly used local materials. Their tools rarely traveled more than a few dozen miles. That doesn't mean they were stuck. It just means their networks were smaller. But there are exceptions. In France, Neanderthals used volcanic rock that came from over 100 miles away. Maybe they traded with other groups, or maybe they traveled long distances themselves. There's still so much we don't know. Let's talk about children. The way a group treats its children can tell you a lot about its culture. Modern humans made tiny beads and ornaments, some small enough for a child to wear. In some graves, children are buried with care, sometimes with toys, sometimes with special objects. A famous grave in Russia called Sungir has 2 children buried side by side. covered in beads, ivory pins, even spears. The beads took thousands of hours to make. That's a sign of love, or at least of special meaning. Neanderthal child burials are rare, but they exist. In Spain, a Neanderthal child was buried with a stone tool and some bones. Maybe it was a token, or maybe just something to keep the body company. We can only guess. All this evidence paints a picture that's much messier than the old story of us versus them. For a long time, the idea was that modern humans wiped out the others. But now it looks more like a slow blending, a fading away, and a few moments of real connection. The world we live in is shaped by all those meetings. Every handshake, every argument, every child born from two different groups. Those moments changed us. If you could line up every human who ever lived, you'd see more diversity in the past than we see today. Different faces, different bodies, different ways of thinking. But underneath the same spark, a drive to survive, to create, to belong. So what does all this mean? It means we're a product of many experiments. Some branches ended, some merged, some got lucky. But everyone added something to the story. When you look at your hands, your face, your memories, you're carrying pieces of all those other humans, not just DNA, but echoes of their lives, the way you handle cold, the way you fight disease. Even the way you dream might be shaped by someone who lived and died before your ancestors ever left Africa. And think about this. There are genes in your body that came from people we only discovered a few years ago. Denisovans weren't even known until 2010. But their DNA lives on. Who knows what other surprises are waiting in our genes? Some scientists believe there were even more lost relatives. Humans we haven't found yet. Every year, new bones turn up in caves, teeth in riverbeds, DNA in the dirt. The story isn't finished. Now you might wonder, does any of this history change who we are today? In some ways, yes. Some people have genes that help them handle fat-rich diets thanks to Neanderthals. Others have genes that shape their immune systems, or the way their bodies react to stress. But in other ways, we're all the same. We're storytellers, dreamers, builders, wanderers. We're shaped by a past that's messier and more interesting than we ever guessed. When scientists look at ancient DNA, they sometimes find pieces that don't match any known human group. They call this ghost DNA. It's from cousins we haven't met yet. Lost branches of the family tree waiting to be discovered. So the next time you wonder where you come from, remember you're not just the child of one species, but of many. You're the product of chance meetings, long journeys, strange twists of fate, and even though we're the only humans left, we carry the legacy of all the others. Their struggles, their dreams, their secrets, all mixed together in the people alive today. Some of those ancient genes are still working even now. They help us handle new challenges, new places, new diseases. They shape the way we look, the way we act, maybe even the way we think. Our story isn't just about one lucky mutation. It's about a world full of humans crossing paths, sharing ideas, and sometimes falling in love. It's about survival, yes, but also about connection. And that's the real magic of our past. We didn't just outlast our cousins. We became something new, something stronger, by carrying a little bit of all of them with us. So here we are, at the end of our journey through time, from 6 million years ago to right now, from the last common ancestor to you, sitting wherever you are, listening to this. Let's bring it all together. The question we started with was simple. When did we become human? But the answer turned out to be anything but simple. We became human when we stood up and freed our hands and saw the world differently. We became human when we started making tools and teaching each other and building culture through shared knowledge. We became human when we discovered meat and fire and learned to cook and fed our growing brains. We became human when our brains exploded in size and our babies became helpless and we were forced to cooperate. We became human when FOXP2 changed and gave us the machinery for language, the ability to share ideas, to tell stories, to ask why. We became human when imagination bloomed and we could picture things that weren't there, believe in things we couldn't see, create meaning beyond survival. We became human when we met Neanderthals and Denisovans and mixed with them and carried forward a legacy that wasn't just ours. But here's the truth. We're not done becoming human. We're still changing, still evolving, still accidents happening in real time. Recent evolution is all around us. Some people can digest milk as adults. That gene only spread in the last 7,000 years. Some people have genes that protect against malaria. like sickle cell. That's evolution responding to disease pressure. Some people have genes that help them live at high altitudes. From Denisovans. That's ancient mixing, still helping us today. Your skin color, your height, how you handle fat and sugar, whether you're likely to be lactose intolerant. All of these are shaped by recent evolution, by accidents that happened in the last 10,000 years. And it's still happening now. Scientists can track genes spreading through populations in real time. They can see which traits are becoming more common, which ones are fading. Evolution never stops. It just changes speed, changes direction, responds to new pressures. But evolution isn't always perfect. Sometimes it creates problems. Genes that helped in the past can hurt in the present. For example, genes that helped store fat during times of famine. Now they contribute to obesity in a world of plenty. Genes that made immune systems aggressive to fight off infections. Now they contribute to allergies and autoimmune diseases. Evolution is about trade-offs, always trade-offs. What works in one time or place might fail in another. That's the nature of accident. It's messy, it's imperfect, it's beautiful in its chaos. So when did we become human? The answer is we never finished becoming human, because accidents never stop happening. Right now, somewhere in the world, a child is being born with a new mutation. Most won't matter. Some might be harmful. But one or two might be the next big thing. The next FOXP2, the next change that shifts everything. We can't predict which ones. We can't control which ones spread. All we can do is watch, adapt, survive. And maybe that's the most human thing of all, our ability to adapt, not through genetic change alone, but through culture, through learning, through imagination. We can change our environment faster than our genes can change. We can invent new tools, new ideas, new ways of living. We don't have to wait for evolution to save us. We can save ourselves, but we also carry the weight of our evolutionary past, the good and the bad, the helpful and the harmful. Your back pain, that's the cost of walking upright. Your difficult childbirth, that's the cost of big brains and narrow pelvises. Your anxiety, maybe that's the cost of imagination, of being able to worry about tomorrow. But your ability to walk long distances, to use your hands with precision, to speak and think and dream, those are the benefits. Evolution doesn't care about fair, it cares about what works. And somehow, through millions of accidents, we ended up here, the most successful large mammal on the planet, spread across every continent, dominating every ecosystem. Not because we're perfect, but because we're adaptable. Not because we're the strongest, but because we're the most creative. Not because we're the fastest, but because we never stop trying. Let's go back to that skull in Morocco. 300,000 years old, modern in every way. The person who owned that skull had the same brain as you, the same capacity, the same potential. But they lived in a different world, a world without language as we know it, without art, without the cultural explosion that defines us today. What separated you from them isn't biology. It's culture. It's the accumulated knowledge of 300,000 years. The stories, the inventions, the ideas passed down and built upon. You stand on the shoulders of everyone who came before, every person who made a tool, told a story, had an idea, passed it on. That's the real power of being human. Not just our genes, but our culture, our ability to learn from the past and imagine the future. Every breath you take is 6 million years of accidents. Every thought is the product of countless mutations. Every word is built on FOXP2 and 1,000 other genes. But you're not just a product of accidents. You're also a participant in them. Every choice you make, every idea you share, every child you raise, you're shaping what comes next. You're part of the experiment still running. And that's what makes it beautiful. The accident that made us human wasn't one moment. It was millions of moments, each one building on the last, each one opening new possibilities. From standing up to freeing our hands, from making tools to cooking food, from growing brains to developing language, from imagining to believing, from mixing with other humans to adapting to every corner of the earth. All of it accidents, all of it beautiful, all of it still happening. You carry DNA from 40,000 years ago, from Neanderthals who lived in Ice Age Europe, from Denisovans who climbed the mountains of Asia, from modern humans who walked out of Africa and spread across the world. A part of them lives in you. A part of you will live in those who come after. That's the legacy of the beautiful accident. Not perfection, but persistence, not a finished product, but an ongoing experiment. You are not the accident. You are what happens after the accident. You are the question. You are the answer. You are the accident that learned to wonder why, and that's the most beautiful accident of all. If you're still awake, thank you for listening. If you've drifted off, I hope you sleep well. Either way, you carry this story with you now. The story of the accident that made us human, and the story isn't finished. It never will be. Because as long as there are humans, there will be accidents. And as long as there are accidents, there's hope. Hope for change, for adaptation, for something new. The beautiful accident continues, and you're part of it.